Welcome to Apron Improv. Tonight I'm going to be making a quick and easy meal that you can do in about 30 minutes or less of prep time, and then a 1-hour bake. This dish I'm going to title Quinoa and Creamed Beef. So you can see all the ingredients here in front of you. This is a very versatile recipe. You can do this to be gluten-free, which I'm choosing to do so tonight. You can choose to make this dairy-free, and you can also fit it to cook with any type of protein, plus or minus whatever vegetables that you want. So if you look at the list of ingredients, you'll be able to sub in and out. Let's get started. So I'm just going to light up my stove here and add a little bit of olive oil to our cast iron Dutch pan right here. I'll turn that down a little bit. Okay. So let your olive oil heat through, and then I will quick saute all of the vegetables that we already have prepped. My staple trio, onion, celery, carrots, is probably something I use in every dish that I make, at least all the heavy dishes. So I will go ahead and put those all in. I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. You don't need a lot of salt, especially because we're using a dried beef in this. So just use it sparingly here to start. You'll have enough flavor taste from the dried beef that we add once it absorbs into the quinoa and the flavor is released when we add the liquid as well. The reason I'm sauteing this is because it gives a little bit more of a rounded flavor to the dish. If you didn't have the time, you actually could put all of the ingredients into one pan and it would be good to go like that. Now keep in mind your depth of flavor won't be quite as prominent, but it would still work if you needed to set something like an Instapot or a crock pot and come back to it later in the day. After these vegetables saute down a little bit, I will add another sort of vegetable. The vegetable I'm choosing to use tonight is cauliflower, and I've simply pulled a frozen bag out of the freezer and we'll put it in here to kind of wilt it down a bit. You can use fresh cauliflower, you could use broccoli, kale, peas, whatever green, or robust vegetable you want to use really works well in this dish. Vegetables have sauteed nicely. I'm going to add my cauliflower next. Remember, it's frozen. So I'm going to put the lid back on here. That'll allow it to steam down a little bit. It'll make it easier for us to actually mix everything together then too. If you had fresh cauliflower, you wouldn't need to let it steam down as much. You could just give it also a quick toss, let it kind of cook down in the olive oil a little bit, and then it would be done and ready for the next part to go. The cauliflower has broken apart almost to the point where I will add my other ingredients. The steam helps kind of break it down. You'll notice that I like to put a lot of vegetables into the dishes I make, and that's because I constantly try to figure out how much nutrition I can pack into one dish to get my kids to eat it. Cauliflower is a really easy vegetable to use because it will take on the flavor of whatever dish you put it in. So this essentially is an empty calorie, extra fiber, extra nutrients, super easy to add to almost every dish you make. For the next part of this dish, I'm going to add the dried chipped beef. This is approximately a half a pound, maybe a little bit less, and I'll just add it right in here. Some of these pieces are really big, but that's okay. I'm going to turn the heat off. because I'm not really cooking anything anymore. I have beef stock over here. Don't use beef broth because broth is always more salty than stock. Remember, the dried chipped beef here already has a high sodium content in it, so you don't want to add extra salt or this dish will be way too salty for you to eat. I have a can of cream of mushroom soup. If you don't like cream of mushroom soup, then we can agree to disagree. And you can use cream of celery. If you're changing your protein for this dish, you could use cream of chicken. So say if you chose to use chicken in this dish versus the dried chipped beef, I would probably choose one of those cream of soups anyway. So just gonna add that all in. Now remember we turned off the heat. That's because I'm going to add my liquid now and I don't want it to all evaporate as soon as I add this to the pan. The point in having the liquid is to evenly cook the quinoa. You can sub in rice, you could do a brown grain rice, you could do long grain rice, you could do any grain that you want to use in this. But tonight I'm choosing quinoa. So I'm adding 2 cups of my beef stock and I'm going to add 1 cup of quinoa. And I'm going to toss this around a little bit. The cream of mushroom soup is going to give the dish a creamy texture, but it also supplies a bit of moisture, and so does the cauliflower. So I'm just gonna try and bury that quinoa in there a little bit, get it like down into the liquid. Quinoa also cooks really fast and very evenly, so that's why I like it in this dish. And it doesn't have to be like super pretty. I mean, this is a quick and easy night meal. As long as it tastes good, then you're set. So here we go. Now the last 2 things I'm going to top this off with are a bit of parsley. This is parsley I pulled out of my freezer. So that goes in. And then just for fun, I have some crunchy onions to top the dish with. I will add some at this point, and then before it comes out of the oven, I would take the top of it off the dish, and you could add more so that the first set of onions will cook down into the dish and add another depth of flavor. The second, like little sprinkle of onions, will be able to toast and get crunchy on top when you take the lid off and let it finish in the oven. So this is all there is to this dish. You cover it, put it in the oven at 375 and let it bake for at least 45 minutes. And it should, then you can take the lid off, add more onions and cook it for another 15 and it should be done. If you wanted to prep this dish before weeknight, you could also do that. You would do the exact same things that I've already done, except let it cool down and you can put it right into your fridge, uncooked grain and all, and then it would be ready for any weeknight. Now consider that whenever you have a cold dish, it is always going to take longer to bake in your oven. If you wanted to, you could pull the dish out of your fridge and heat it a little bit on top of your stove to get the cast iron pan nice and warm. Then you could put it in your oven and bake at the same temperature for the same amount of time. Maybe even a little bit less time because your quinoa would start to cook through as you heated it up on the stove. If you're cooking with a cold dish to start, you would need your oven at 375 and it would need at least an hour and 20 minutes to bake through. I have our quinoa creamed beef here. It has been in the oven approximately 1 hour. So as you can see, everything has melted together nicely. The quinoa is super soft. If for some reason your rice is a bit undercooked, you would just try it, determine whether or not the rice needed a few more minutes. If you ran out of liquid, all you would have to do would be to add more stock to this recipe, maybe a half cup or so, and put the lid back on and put it in the oven for another 20 minutes or so. And then you could try it again and make sure that everything was well tender and that everything was cooked through. This right here is a great example of an easy weeknight meal. So I hope that you guys enjoy it. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel to learn how to become a better cook and make more easy weeknight meals like this.